KickAss Witch, putting the K in magic. I'm Joanna DeVoe, and you are watching a video for Autism Awareness Month. And since I am a mother of a child with autism, and he's not much of a child anymore, he is 19 years old, I know a thing or two about living with someone with autism and loving someone with autism. And so I would like to present to you my personal 8 kick-ass tips for living with and loving a person with autism. Just keep in mind that these tips are based on my experience as a mother and the experience that I've had getting to know the other kids that my son has been in various programs and schools with, and it doesn't necessarily represent every single person with autism. They are as much individuals as we all are, although there are some general tips that will typically work for most people for learning how to deal with them and maybe even to see them a little bit better. And my first tip for that is do not talk about them when they are in the room like they are not in the room. Just because they may not be able to communicate in the same way that we all do, they may not even, outwardly recognize that you're there. It is all going in, and they are taking it all in. So even if you think you're speaking kindly about the progress that they're making, if you're constantly talking about how they have autism and how they're doing, if they're doing well, if they're not doing well, or this thing that you're trying that isn't working and this thing that you're trying that is working, you are shaming them and creating the sense within them that there is something wrong. This is something that my family and we dealt with my son. Especially, he got his diagnosis from UCLA when he was 3 years old. So that was quite a few years ago, and there wasn't a lot known about autism. It was very mysterious, and people wanted to talk about it all the time, which they still do, which is good. You want that dialogue going, but you don't want it to create a sense of shame in the person that you love that has autism. So be mindful of that. Tip number 2 is to be aware that their feelings and emotions, they don't always reach their face the way that ours do. We used to call my son Somber Puss, or actually my mom called him Somber Puss when he was little because he was so stoic and it was just hard to tell what he was feeling. But these people absolutely have feelings, and if you get the opportunity to talk to somebody, an adult with autism, and most of them will tell you that back in the day when they were kids, they were very frustrated because they felt everything and they heard everything, but they weren't able to get it out. So keep that in mind and learn to communicate and learn to help them communicate in other ways. For example, if they are nonverbal, there are now these handy little fanny packs that come with a really basic keyboard on top that you can program in yourself, that you can push a button and it'll say, I have to go to the bathroom, or I'm hungry, or I'm feeling happy, or I'm bored, or will you play with me? Different things you can program in that are customized to the person. And then you can start them out with that, and then later on they can graduate to an actual keyboard where they're typing in what they want to say, and it will say it for them. And never give up on their ability to communicate verbally, because sometimes that just comes later. My son didn't start speaking until he was 6, and at that point it wasn't like he had a ton of language. I mean, he just had a few words, like moo was for moon and ba was for ball, the 2 most important things in his universe. The moon and balls. He's obsessed with all things spherical. So be patient and know that they're in there and that they might not be able to express themselves in the same way that you can, but that doesn't mean that you can't develop a way to communicate. A lot of people are fans of sign language, and that can help give them a way to express themselves, so you might just want to see what they prefer. I'm more of a fan of the keyboard because that's something that other people can understand, and in order to be understood when you're using sign language, you have to be around people that can read sign language. So I feel that's a little bit more limiting, but whatever your child enjoys, just let them go in that direction. And tip number 3 is kind of building on tip number 2, and that is to help them identify emotions in you and in themselves so that they can express themselves and say how they are feeling. And the way that I did this for my son is I started out with paper, and I would draw like a happy face, a really basic happy face, and then I would say, happy! I'd be like super animated, which really isn't hard for me. I think being goofy really helps with people with autism, because the more playful you are, the more you can engage them, and that may be true of all kids. But, you know, I'd do happy, and then I would point to a sad face, and I would do sad. This is my sad face. And I would try to get him to practice happy and sad, and I know this sounds like strange that you would have to teach someone like, you know, teach someone emotions, but you do often with autistic people. They don't understand emotions. They can't read body language. They understand their own emotions. They understand that they feel angry, but they can't tell sometimes if you are angry or not. My son often to this day, he will say, "Are you mad?" And he will genuinely be worried, and I'll say, "No, I'm not mad, I'm happy." And then he's fine, and then he can go on and do what he wants to do. But he does have to check in quite a lot. He wants to know how everyone's feeling. It just gives him a sense of safety. So make sure the person that you love knows how to express their feelings and understands how other people are feeling. This is very important for when they go out into the world and they need to navigate like a busy shopping mall or the grocery store. It's very important to know where people are coming from, and that's one of the main things that people with autism often have trouble with. So very important. Tip number 4 is, instead of trying to pull them out of their shell and get them to participate in your world all the time, especially if they are severely autistic and seem to be living in a world all their own, go into their world. Go participate in their world and see if that doesn't help develop an interest in the rest of the world around them. It did for me and my son. That was maybe the most pivotal moment of his life and mine in terms of bringing him in to this world around him. And I'm like breathing heavy because every time I try to record this, I start crying at this part. And it's just gonna happen. It was a beautiful moment, and it's gonna make me cry. So I will tell you what happened. My son, he was just locked in his own world, and he was very obsessed with golf balls, which he still is today. But he used to do this thing, either outside on the sidewalk or indoors, we had hardwood floors, where he would spit on the floor, and for hours, for days, for weeks, for months on end, he could just sit there and bounce his ball in the spit. And it was very heartbreaking because I wanted him to do things that other children do. I wanted him to have fun, and it just didn't seem very fun to me to be sitting there bouncing this ball. And it was hard to get him to do anything else but sit and bounce this ball on and on and on. And the noise was very like repetitive, on and on and on. But it just didn't work for me, trying to get him away from that. That was all he cared about, to such a passionate degree that I don't think there's anything you could have done to him to get him out of that situation. So one day, I just sat down on the floor, I got a golf ball, and I spit on the floor, and I started bouncing a golf ball in my own spit, and he stopped cold what he was doing, and he looked at me with such a look of recognition, and it was just a moment of my son finally seeing me. And me seeing him see me, and it was very exciting, and we had a wonderful day, and it's hard to articulate. It created a friendship or relationship where I was then able to enter into his world and have a little fun and delight him. I don't think anybody had ever done that for him before, and then that's what led him eventually to be able to talk, because then we were having fun, we were on the same level together, we were engaged, and I was able to like take him around the apartment and be like, faucet, faucet, water, water, and he thought everything was funny and delightful. I guess that earned a certain level of trust with him. So if you're having a problem with someone that you can't like get them out of your shell, maybe you just need to go and join them in their shell for a minute and make friends with them. and see what happens. Miracles could happen. That was a miracle for me, and I'm happy to, as much as it makes me cry, share that tip with you because it might be the most important thing that has ever happened between me and my son, and it really helped him to engage with the rest of the world. Tip number 5 is to go with the flow of their passions. So like, for example, my son's passion is golf balls, but what he really likes about the golf balls is the sound. He likes to flick them. He can identify whatever kind of core is inside each golf ball, down to what color it is, if it's made of rubber bands, if it is solid. Just by flicking it, he can tell you what is inside. It's kind of amazing. But he really likes the sound. So the way that we have gone with the flow of his passion is to get him a keyboard and different instruments and let him make music and let him make his own sounds. And then also my husband takes him to the driving range and lets him shoot, lets him shoot balls. That shows how much I know about golf. Lets him hit balls and develop his interest further, in golf. And we'll watch golf on TV sometimes or get him golfing books. And so whatever they're interested in, they usually have 1 or 2 extreme passions. I heard about a kid whose passion was rain gutters. So his parents had to go out and find every manual on rain gutters. But they're good parents for doing that because, maybe he's going to invent a better way to make a rain gutter, or maybe he's going to be a person that installs rain gutters one day. I don't know, but I believe that we all have gifts and that people with autism have gifts, and sometimes they're so very strong and specific, and that in itself is a gift because that's telling you they're not going to spend all these years, wondering, looking for their purpose and trying to find themselves. They're born with it. Something that's really common with kids with autism are trains, an obsession with trains and obsessions with fans, like ceiling fans, fans that blow air. And video games are very popular, but I would caution against letting them get very involved with violent video games because they will just take it to a level that no one else can, and they will just get so involved in that world. So a word of caution, you can take it or leave it, but that's my personal opinion about violent video games. Tip number 6 is to prepare them for transitions. So don't just rip them out of one activity and into another and be like, okay, we gotta go, we're going to the grocery store. They're very likely to have a temper tantrum because they find that kind of thing very jarring. So it's really important to, well, it's a good idea just to have a calendar so you can show them what they're going to be doing in the days and weeks ahead. My son is a total calendar savant. He loves his calendar and he loves to know, he likes to follow the phases of the moon, what the moon is going to look like that day, what he's going to be doing in his program at school, and if he's going to get to visit family. He tracks all of that on his calendar and it gives him a sense of comfort. And in small ways you can do that too in preparing them, okay, in 15 minutes we're going to stop coloring and we're going to eat our dinner. And then you maybe give them a countdown, 5 more minutes and we're eating dinner. 1 more minute. And that it sounds like it's tedious, but it's not that much extra work, it's just throwing out a little sentence, but it's so comforting to them, and ultimately it's going to be helpful to you because it's going to help you to avoid temper tantrums. And that's very important, again, with many people with autism. And they're not being bad kids when they're having temper tantrums. They are experiencing extreme distress because they find the world around them to be stressful. So anything that you can do to ease that for them, to ease their transition from thing to thing to thing, is helpful and is going to make both your lives a little bit easier. Tip number 7 is, again, in this vein of life is a little bit more challenging for them, sometimes a lot more challenging for them, and they have sensory issues, almost a heightened sense of smell and sight and sounds comes at them really loudly. So it's very important that you can help them to cushion that for themselves. And I have a pair of red headphones for my son that helps block out noise if you're going to go to a place like Disneyland or a busy mall. He doesn't have to wear them very often anymore, but it's nice to know that he has that option, and I always let him choose that option if he wants to. And he was even able to go to his first rock concert because of those headphones. So maybe get yourself a pair of headphones. They have some really expensive ones. Mine are just little cheapies, but they have expensive ones that are smaller and more discreet, and they block out all of the peripheral noise, but then still allow you to hear, you know, someone near you that's talking to you. And they find, you know, a lot of busy lights and signs and a lot of visual stimulation. They find that overstimulating, which might cause them to do something that is nicknamed stimming in the world of autism. And for my son, that's like this, but for many people it's rocking. My son will also do rocking or jumping, and the stimming is a way for them to cope. So don't take their stimming away. Definitely don't make it be something that they're going to be in trouble for. Let them rock. Let them twiddle their fingers or do what they have to do to feel comforted. That is a self-soothing mechanism, and it is there for a reason. So focus on, you know, maybe not taking them into these extreme public environments, and if you have to, let them wear sunglasses, let them wear headphones, let them do something to protect themselves, and if they need to take it a step further and stim, let them do that too. And another thing that you can do is to make sure that their clothes are comfortable. Sometimes they'll have tags in the back of their clothes that just drive them crazy. We've all probably had that experience, but for them it's often much worse. And then just different fabrics like wool or some synthetic fabrics, they can feel very itchy and really bug and distract them all day long. And they can also be very sensitive to laundry detergent. So you might want to look into what's in your laundry detergent and go for a more natural option. And my 8th and final tip is to look into their diet beyond just going gluten-free and dairy-free, which is very common, and it is helpful and it will take you so far. But the problem with that is that it doesn't actually fix the problem, and I am not suggesting that there is a cure for autism or that you even try to cure your child of autism. But I do think it's important to make them as comfortable as possible and as healthy as possible, and to help them live, you know, the best life that they can and to really enjoy themselves. And they can't do that if they're having a lot of tummy trouble or a lot of sensory issues. And the reason that they are having that most likely is because the intestinal lining, their gut lining has been compromised, and it has a bunch of little holes in it. It is a permeable intestinal lining, and there is a lot of debate about what causes this. I believe that is caused from all of the chemicals and fake foods and additives that we are taking in, but regardless of the cause, there is a way to fix that and to heal the intestinal lining, and that is by using the GAPS protocol. So I highly recommend that anybody that is living with a person with autism, loves a person with autism, is working with people with autism, that they go out and get a copy of the book. I forget the name of it now that I'm telling you, you have to have it. Look up the GAPS protocol online and read all about it. Read the GAPS diet. And I also recommend looking into Donna Gates' body ecology diet, because they can work well together and you can get some tips from both diets and maybe find something that works for you. It is a diet that is not for vegans, but I don't recommend putting an autistic child on a vegan diet. It is not a diet that is easy to do. It is something that requires an effort, but the payoff is huge, and it's worth the effort. And if you have a child with autism, you are making such an effort anyways that I think that you'll be more than happy to participate in, you know, working with their diet and helping them to heal their gut lining. Because what happens when there is holes in the gut lining and it's permeable is certain proteins get loose and get into the bloodstream and create kind of an opiate-like dazed and confused state in your mind, and also can create all kinds of damage throughout the body and lead to more problems down the road on top of autism. So their health is just as important as yours to keeping a happy life, and there are special ways that you can address that with diet. And some people claim to have cured their children of autism at very young ages using this diet, but I think that at the very least it's worth looking into to make them a bit more comfortable. So that's it. That is my 8 tips for my 8 kick-ass tips for living with and loving someone with autism. And I just want to leave you with this last thought, that if someone with autism has come into your life, that you have been blessed. You have been blessed with a new perspective and a new way of seeing the world. Many of these people are just so in tune with nature, and they're just naturally happy, and they will enjoy things, the very, very smallest things, like a breeze or a funny sound, in a way that most of us don't even notice anymore. So I hope that maybe you're going to go through a grieving process when you first go through the diagnosis, but that grieving process is really about you and the expectations that you had for this person, and nothing to do with who that person is. They are still there, they are still valuable, and they are ready for you to just love and enjoy everything about them. So I hope that you can get through your grieving process without involving them in it, and that ultimately you can come to see them as the amazing gift to your life that they are. Much love. Peace.